Journey of Enlightenment. I am your host, Dr. Roger Gopaul. Last week, an individual came to me and he asked an age-old question. He asked me, he said, Dr. Gopaul, what do you think is the meaning of life? I actually hesitated to respond because such a question, I believe, probably dawned on the mind of man since we were able to first think how many thousands of years ago. It is really a question that we all ask ourselves. What is the meaning of life? I think if you ask 1,000 people that question, you may actually get 1,000 different answers. So I told him, I said, well, the meaning of life changes based on the individual you may ask. But for me, the meaning of life is very simple. To be at peace, to have a peace of mind, that is, to be happy, to have joy. So I asked him, I said, what about you? What is life to you? What does it mean to you? And his response was, well, I don't mind being happy, but what if I get sick? So I said, well, what if you get sick? Would it then take away your happiness? He said, well, yes. What if I lose my job and I can't pay for a good doctor? And what if things that I expect, the things that I want in life doesn't work out exactly the way that I want it to? What if I fail at the things that I try to do? And what if these things that I am hoping to achieve in life just doesn't work out that way? And I thought for a moment and I asked him, I said, how many what ifs can you create that will deprive you of your happiness? Now, of course, happiness will be defined based upon each individual's perception and perspective of what happiness means. But if we find ways in our lives to always identify the negative, then we run the risk of being the chronic complainer. My topic today deals with the chronic complainer, one who is constantly finding ways to complain about circumstances or situations that surround them. Zig Ziglar, a very well-known speaker and author, he once said, be grateful for what you have and stop complaining. It bores everyone else, does no good, and it doesn't solve any problems. What Zig Ziglar was trying to say here is that going about life complaining about this and complaining about that would bring no results to the complainer, because it is not solution oriented. And many a times we go about life just searching for what we can complain about, but not really finding positive solutions to those problems. I remember a story, it's a funny story given by Les Brown. He said that once there was a man standing on the road, and the man was looking at a dog lying down on a wooden step. And the dog was moaning and groaning and moaning and groaning. So the man asked the owner, why is your dog moaning and groaning? Is there something wrong with him? So the owner said, well, the dog is actually lying down on a nail that is hurting him. So he's moaning and groaning. So the man on the road, quite confused, looked at the owner and said, well, if the nail is hurting the dog, why is he moaning and groaning? Shouldn't he just get up? And the man said, well, I guess the nail isn't hurting him bad enough. We sometimes go about life moaning and groaning about everything under the sun. But is it hurting us bad enough to do something about it? Or do we prefer remain in that state of moaning and groaning? In the Ramayana, the Queen Kaikeyi, one of the wives of King Dasarath, had everything going for her. The Ramayana described King Dasarath as the incarnation of love itself. So she had a very loving husband and king. She had a palace and servants. She had 2 beautiful sons. One may ask, what more could this queen want? Influenced by her maid, Queen Kaikeyi was not satisfied that Ram would be installed on the throne. She wanted her own son. She went to King Dasarath and she started to complain to him. She said to the loving king, you have made me so many promises and you said to me, ask, ask, but yet you deliver none. How am I to believe that what I ask for today, you would give unto me? The queen did not realize how many things that she already had, the things that she should be grateful for, the things that she should be so thankful for, including having a very loving husband and 2 wonderful princes as her sons. She had the love and the adoration of Shri Ram, but she was still searching for something to complain. The chronic complainer. The question is, why do we go about life trying to find what is wrong, complaining about the things that is not going our way, rather than looking for and identifying the wonderful blessings that exist around us? There are many theories for this. And one theory that I will put forward is that our minds are trained to think in a particular way when we allow thought patterns to develop. It is possible that as we think more and more about certain types of thoughts, whether it be thoughts of joy, thoughts of peace, thoughts of anger, thoughts of complaining, we are actually developing a mindset. We are training our mind to think in a particular fashion. Studies show that when we train our mind to think in a particular way, what happens is that our minds are then so set to operate in a default position, meaning that our mind then goes into that type of thinking, that type of thought pattern easily. It falls into that state easily. By allowing our minds to develop a repeated habit of thinking negatively, of complaining, of looking for faults in everything, what we are so doing is crafting a framework of thought that will become our default attitude and behavior. It is very important then that we pay particular attention to the thought patterns that we are allowed to develop in our minds. Why do we complain? We complain mainly because of something called the expectation gap. The expectation gap exists when there's a desire and then there's the reality. And the difference between that desire and that reality, if it is not the same, creates a gap, meaning that our expectation was not met. Failure to meet that expectation or to realize that expectation leaves us maybe a bit disappointed, maybe a bit discouraged. And if our default behavior is one where we find the negative, then we move into that state because the mind is already ready for that state of complaining. What then happens when we complain? There is a temporary satisfaction that one may feel by venting. So the situation happens, we then receive a temporary satisfaction when we vent, then it develops negative thinking. Negative thinking then develops into a habit. So therefore when circumstances happen again, we default into complaining in order to get that temporary satisfaction, then develop further negative thinking that reinforces the habit, and the cycle continues over and over again. It becomes a very difficult habit, as any habit, to eventually break, because now it is our default behavior. The problem is that many a times the chronic complainer doesn't see themselves as a complainer. They think, to a large extent, that everything is wrong with the world around them, but not themselves. I remember working with this guy at a soft drink manufacturing company many years ago. And almost every day he came to work late. But he complained about the traffic situation every single day. So I could not help but ask, why don't you just leave earlier like everyone else? He then complained about getting up too early. He complained about his co-workers. He complained about his lunch. He complained about his finances. He complained about his health, despite the fact that nothing was wrong with him according to his doctors. He complained and he complained, but in his mind, he saw everything that was wrong with the world, but he paid no attention to his own mindset, what he was creating, what habit he was harnessing. It is critical for us to pay attention to our mindset. Are we the chronic complainer, or are we solution-oriented? A study that was done by Guy Wench in the magazine Psychology Today said that many a times the chronic complainer actually see themselves as an optimist. They believe that they are saying the right thing and everyone else might be missing the point. He said that the chronic complainer is not necessarily the pessimist. So he pointed out the difference as looking at a glass that is half filled with water. He said that the optimist would see the glass being half full. The pessimist would see the glass being half empty. The chronic complainer doesn't see it being half full nor half empty, but sees it as being maybe the glass is too dirty. Maybe there's a chip on the glass. Maybe the water has some bacteria that may get them sick by tomorrow. Maybe a doctor will not be able to help their cause. The chronic complainer is not just lacking in their future orientation for solutions, but in their present, they search for everything that could possibly be wrong. So let's take a look at what causes us to complain. We said that maybe there's an expectation gap. But the expectation gap in itself is not necessarily a reason to complain. When we go about life, not looking for solutions, but looking for everything that is wrong, it could be a dissatisfaction with our own selves, a reflection of how we feel inside. So our dissatisfaction with something on the outside doesn't become solution-oriented because our dissatisfaction inside has us or causes us to revert to a thinking that is very negative, one that we find solution in just complaining about it, a temporary satisfaction. There was a funny story that I read in the newspaper quite just recently, and apparently the story was true, about a bank robber who went to the bank. He held up the teller, demanded $20,000, and he left. Upon reaching home and he counted the money, he realized that it was less than $20,000 which he demanded. He went back to the bank, believe it or not, to complain to the teller that she gave him less money than he demanded. Of course, he was arrested. He complained to the police officers that in his robbery, he was robbed because he was given less than he thought. Let us be aware of our mindset. Let us be aware of this habit of complaining. Is it possible to change? And the answer is thankfully yes. As with any habit, change does not occur overnight. What do we do? The first thing that we do is to be aware of our thought patterns, to become aware of our thinking habits. If we realize ourselves constantly falling into that habit of complaining, then we know that something is wrong. It is not a healthy way to live. So we allow ourselves then to move into a solution orientation. Rather than complaining, get into the habit of asking ourselves, what can we do? What solution is there? What possibilities exist for us to make it better? If the problem is there, then a solution would be there. It may not be possible overnight to identify that solution, but the solution will come with patience. Secondly, develop an attitude of gratitude. Rather than complain about everything under the sun, let us start being happy for the things that we have, rather than the things that we don't have. Be thankful for every moment. Be thankful for every circumstance and every situation. good or bad. Be thankful for the lessons that we may learn. Be thankful for the things that we are able to escape. Be thankful for the blessings of the people around us. Developing an attitude of gratitude. My dear friends, let us take this week to assess ourselves, to reflect on our mindset, to become solution-oriented, to find gratitude in everything around us. Thank you for joining me on a journey of enlightenment. Please share our video if you enjoy and you see value in it. And I look forward to speaking with you again in our next session. Thank you all very much.